Welcome to Emphasis Added, a podcast brought to you by the Houston Law Review about legal issues, prominent lawyers, and the study and practice of law. I'm Harrison Little.
And I'm Jake Garino, and we are your hosts for Season 5. Thank you for joining us.
We're joined here today by Mackenzie Caldwell and Hannah Syburg, two members of Board 61 of the Houston Law Review and recent graduates of the University of Houston Law Center. Today we aim to provide a comprehensive view of a summer associateship by sharing the experiences of both a transactional summer associate and a litigation summer associate. Mackenzie and Hannah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
But before we begin, you may have noticed that we have a new presence on the podcast today. Graysen Mechler, along with her co-host, Jeffrey Okolo, will soon be taking over the reins of Emphasis Added. So before we get started, I wanted to give Graysen an opportunity to introduce herself.
Thank you, Harrison. My name is Graysen Mechler. I'm a rising 3L at the University of Houston Law Center. This summer, I'll be a summer associate with Latham & Watkins in their Houston office, and I'm so excited to be a co-host for Season 6 of the Emphasis Added podcast. So for today's episode, we're going to start off by giving our guest a chance to introduce themselves, discuss why they chose to go the transactional route or the litigation route, and their initial perceptions of their summer associateships. Next, we will delve into a typical day in the life of a summer associate from each guest's point of view. We will then reflect on their overall summer associate experiences and conclude with specific tips or advice that they may have to offer.
So first, we just want to talk a little bit about y'all's background. So would you mind telling us a little bit about your legal interests and where y'all will be working after passing the bar?
Mm-hmm. I'll start. So I'm interested mainly in transactional work. I'm not super sure what practice group I want to do right now, but I'm looking at M&A, capital markets, maybe a finance group. I just, trying to feel things out. But post passing the bar, I'll be working at Latham & Watkins' Houston office.
And what about you, Hannah?
Well, I'm still interested in sort of lots of different kinds of law, but it's been great that I can delve more into intellectual property at McCool-Smith, where I will be working after hopefully passing the bar. And also they do a lot of complex commercial work as well. So that kind of is great that they're on the smaller side. They're a boutique litigation firm. So, they cover lots of different kinds of cases, and you don't get maybe siloed as you would being more in like a practice group where it's kind of more of the same kind of thing. So I have lots of interest and sort of excited to see where my career there leads me.
And so do your firms give you like a certain window of time to decide exactly what practice group you want to start gravitating towards, or how does that work at y'all's firms specifically?
Well, at my firm, because it's basically like you come in as a technical associate, so you work on the IP side, or you come as a commercial associate. And so you kind of, because it's so small, you can work with different partners on lots of different matters. It really just depends on like what they need when you're, when you start. And so it is possible to work on bankruptcy or, antitrust a little bit, or breach of contract, and help somewhat with the IP side, because a lot of times they have the commercial associates help draft the complaint or do the discovery, that sort of thing, rather than obviously delving into the real technical aspects of it. So we don't have to, they decide for you in a way, right? Because you have the technical background or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yeah, at Latham, we kind of have a 2-year period where we get to kind of float around and figure it out, try different practice groups, see what we like, see what we don't like. And within that, you can specialize earlier or later. It's just kind of a range of time.
Got it. Okay.
And Mackenzie, starting with you first, I know you spoke a little bit about what you want to do in transactional work, but what first led you to want to do transactional work at all?
Yeah, so I have a master's in technical communication, and post-graduating with that, I was like, how do I actually apply this? So I turned to the legal fields, because a lot of the skills you learn in that program really parallel nicely to the legal field. So like knowing your audience, so crafting a contract for that particular situation, for that particular client's needs, that kind of correlates between the master's program and the legal field, just in different ways. So that's kind of what drew me there, but also, this sounds a little weird, I really like documents. Like, I love the minutia of making all the formatting perfect, but also, like I said, seeing the bigger picture of what does this client need and how do I kind of fit that puzzle piece in the larger document.
So it sounds like you thought a little bit more ahead than a lot of law students do, because a lot of people just show up and they have no idea, but it sounds like you had a decent idea pretty early on.
Yeah, before I started my master's, I was thinking about law school. I wasn't 100% sure, so I went ahead and did my degree for that, and then was like, yes, law school is the way I should go. And I think it's been a good decision. We'll see if we can pass the bar.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. And so, Hannah, what are some of the things that motivated you to pursue a career in litigation?
It's funny that Mackenzie just said, how excited she gets by documents and the formatting and all that. That was the exact opposite of how I felt. And I'd even written that down, that like the idea of kind of looking at documents all day was something I didn't want to do as much of. So, I kind of was drawn more to the, the flashier part, the being in trial, being in a courtroom. I'd done the Hibberd Novice tournament here at school with Jess McAllister and had really enjoyed that. And so obviously that's only one part of litigation, but I knew that, I would be excited to get an opportunity to be in the courtroom sort of day to day or whenever, it does happen. And that also, researching and writing is a huge part of being, in litigation to get, all those motions drafted, all that sort of thing. And that those are my weaker skills to a degree, and that I, really wanted to improve upon those. So I think kind of early experiences of 1L, and then, those skills, or knowing that those are what the skills were involved in. And then also I was a teacher, so Mackenzie spoke of her background beforehand. I was a teacher for 10 years, and I think a lot of skills translate just to the legal field in general, but a lot of litigators, I think, sort of were teachers as well, because you're telling a story to a captive audience, right? An audience that has to be there, whether it's a jury or it's your students. And then, being able to sort of anticipate people's needs and, balance lots of different people's priorities or what they need, where it's the client or the court or your, co-counsel is something you have to also do as a teacher. So that kind of, I felt like, led me more to the litigation side than the transactional side.
Yeah, and on that, I got the opportunity to do transactional work and litigation my 1L summer, and quite literally within the first week of doing the litigation work, I had a research project and I said, oh, this is not for me. So I think you just kind of figure it out and know with your experience.
Well, I had the pleasure of watching firsthand for that mock trial competition as 1L, so I got to watch Hannah dominate in that. So
she's
it's
amazing.
Very clear that you're on the right track, that you both are.
Well, we couldn't have won without our star witnesses.
Well, wasn't going to brag. But.
I'll do it for you, Harrison.
Okay, and now kind of reflecting back on how you felt maybe as a 1L or 2L going into your summer associateships, do you remember being in that position and feeling like you had any like anxiety about it, or like what was going through your head?
I think for sure. I mean, anytime you're doing something new, right, and you're trying to impress people, it'll be, anxiety inducing no matter what. Even if you are, on the older side or this is your second career, right, it's still, you have to prove to yourself that you can do the work and do it well, and that you can do it in the way maybe that, your firm would want it, because, there's lots of different ways of doing, work across the legal field. And so I definitely felt, some anxiety about that. And then additionally, for me, because it's a smaller firm, there was only going to be one other summer associate with me. And, that can kind of go, one of two ways. But luckily, it was great. I love Iktay, who goes to Georgetown. So I think those were kind of my two, like how would I do socially with only one other summer associate, and then how would the work product actually go?
Yeah, for me, I kind of had similar concerns. I was really worried about looking incompetent, I guess, because you walk out of your first year of law school, or your second even, and you're like, what am I doing? I don't know anything. And you don't, but everybody knows that there, I think, and you have to get over that feeling of like lacking knowledge yourself, because you're capable, you're intelligent, that's why you're there, and so you're just there to learn, like just be you.
Yeah, and I feel like that goes for everybody. I feel like some amount of anxiety is just unavoidable. Everyone's going to show up and be a little bit nervous and feel like they don't know anything. But I think people are generally surprised by how accommodating these firms are and helping you feel comfortable and showing that they're there to teach you things. So, yeah, I feel like it's a little unavoidable. And
I think it's healthy, right? I mean, I think if you aren't sort of nervous or have a little anxiety, then
yeah,
maybe you're missing the sort of bigger picture of what's going on.
You shouldn't be overly confident. Like, you don't know anything, and that's okay.
And being open to learning.
You should exactly be open to learning new things and becoming that professional that you'll eventually become.
Yeah.
And so most people understand that law school is a bit more litigation focused. Consequently, many law students are a little unsure of what to expect from a transactional position. So, Mackenzie, what were your early perceptions of what you'd be doing in a transactional practice? And were you anxious about that uncertainty at all?
I mean, yes, I was anxious. I knew how to write like a memo or a brief from LSS, but besides that, I genuinely didn't have a concrete idea of what transactional work would look like. I thought it was just going to be plugging in different like clauses into a contract, or I don't know why, but I was like, yes, I'm just going to make this whole entire contract from scratch. I didn't know what precedent was. So also, I didn't really have a perception at all because I only knew that I wouldn't be doing litigation. Like I had a perception in a negative way. Like I wouldn't be doing briefs. I wouldn't be doing memos in the litigation context. I wouldn't be preparing for trial. And that's kind of all I knew. Like I remember first hearing, oh, we're going to draft a PSA, and my mind went to public service announcement. That's not what it stands for. But like, you don't know what you don't know. So yeah, I was a little anxious about it, to say the least.
I've honestly never thought of it that way. And I feel like that's probably what drives a lot of people into transactional practices, is that they find out that litigation isn't for them. And they may not know exactly what goes on in a transactional practice. They may not have a background in finance, but they know what they don't like, and they know what the other option is. So I guess I've never thought of it in that light before.
Yeah, I just knew I didn't want to do case research, and that I wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah. So, kind of on the back of that, I first worked in a law firm and I did litigation, so I had the same experience where I had no idea what transactional work was, but I knew for sure, like, I did not want to do litigation. Preparing for trials was so stressful. It's like, there's no way I'm going to be doing this forever. And so I think one of the biggest mysteries that a law student has to, like, figure out and wonders about is what the day in and day out actually looks like for an attorney. So we'd love if, like, each of you could just walk through a day in the life of what you did as a summer associate.
Yeah, I've been talking a lot, so Hannah, go ahead.
I mean, it was, kind of how you would imagine, getting there around 9 o'clock, whenever your firm, generally wants you to get there. And then working on a lot of research questions. So I might have had some more kind of like long-term research projects to really prepare for a trial or a hearing, where like parole evidence or the issues of contracts in a certain state were, kind of at stake. And so that might be a longer term thing you're looking at. Whereas also then, within a case, someone needs a quick research question. If I'm going to respond in this way, is there precedent to really back that up? Or, what kind of pitfalls or what things I have to look out for, in this way. So it was a lot of research and writing on a given day, but also got to see some depositions being taken of expert witnesses. And that was a little more towards the end of the summer, and it wasn't kind of peppered in every day as I would have thought it was. So a lot of research and writing and, discussing with Icte, if he was writing, working on something, what had he found? So we weren't doing the same research, but like discussing it with him as well. So I like the collaboration as well. Not that you can't do that on the transactional side too, but I think collaborating as well with your other summer associates or maybe with the associate on the case as to like, I'm getting stuck. What am I not thinking of, in this area of law and that sort of thing. And then maybe a few meetings, about your assignments, but kind of brief meetings. And then, hopefully a lunch. We had lunch every day with someone, which was really nice because it's a smaller place, like I said, so they, took care of us in that way. And so, a lot of research, writing, proofreading, some of the, other lawyers' work, but then also, my own work, which I'll get to in advice later. Nice.
What about you, Mackenzie?
I usually got there pretty early. You don't need to get here this early, but like 7:30. It depends on what your firm wants, but I just like to get there early. I liked kind of the peace and quiet before everybody got there to prepare myself. So I would start out with like a running to-do list, kind of coded based off the deals I was working on and what things needed to get done for that thing, for that specific deal, and just kind of refreshing that each morning. If I had any billable hours that needed a narrative that I didn't get to, I would put those in before I started. And then maybe go for a coffee chat if I had one scheduled, or sometimes there's people walking around the office like, hey, do you want to go get some coffee? Say yes, go talk to them, go learn who they are, go learn what they do. That's actually really crucial, I think, for the summer experience is the work you do is important. It helps you learn, but you learn more about the practice area by learning the people. So the social element is important. From there, I would just kind of get to work on whatever assignments I had. It might be kind of like you said, some proofreading stuff. You might be making sure all the definitions are properly defined in a contract, run a red line or two, pretty standard stuff. Maybe a lunch, and then back to work, and then maybe a firm event or dinner. It sounds pretty similar to what you did. It's just sub out the assignments for transactional work instead of case research.
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely did not show up at 7 in the morning when I was a summer associate. Mackenzie was much better in that respect than I was. One thing you mentioned earlier was how you weren't familiar with Precedent beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain exactly what that is in a transactional setting?
Yeah, so Precedent is basically looking back at what people did before you, right? So you're going to narrow it down by what type of deal am I doing? Is my client similar? What kind of needs do they have? And you'll look at a few things, maybe like 3 or 4, and try to find what's the best match based on what your current needs are, comparing it to those past documents that have been done. Then you'll obviously get help from associates and partners. You're not alone on this, but you'll basically sub things out and rewrite parts of the precedent, but it's just like a template that you start with and create a new deal, a new document for your current client.
Yeah, I think calling it a template is, that's essentially what it is, and you're just filling in deal-specific information while maintaining a structure that was perhaps used in a prior transaction.
Right, yeah. You don't have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
It's probably better that way.
Yeah.
Especially given how long some of these documents get, and it's
Right.
insane at times.
Yes.
But Hannah, you talked a little bit about collaboration with regard to mid-level associates and partners. What did the collaboration look like there? Were you meeting regularly with supervisors when you were doing this research and producing memos? Just what was your experience there?
I think it depended a little bit on maybe who had given you the assignment and the type of assignment. So on the longer assignment, it was from my partner mentor. So I had a partner mentor and an associate mentor, and so we met kind of regularly to see where I was at, if I thought the research needed to go in a different direction, or if I needed something to clarify. And then otherwise, it was kind of shorter research assignments, so I might be going to ask them a clarifying question again. But I think I found kind of associates who I felt also were pretty open to being helpful. And so even if they weren't necessarily on that case or whatever, if I was just kind of lost in the weeds of how do I feel like I've been spinning my wheels, or I'm really trying to look at too big of a picture when this is obviously a narrow issue, but I don't really know how to drill down. And while I of course should have looked at the secondary sources first before you start researching, maybe it was unclear, and I skipped a step or two. So I did like being able to ask different people kind of how they would tackle the problem and how they do their research work, because I think we learn that, a template of, how to research, but people still kind of learn over time what works best for them, or little tips and tricks. And so I felt like while I had not many meetings or things set up on the books always, people were pretty open to dropping by, quickly to say, I'm really stuck, or I think this is, this is something new. Maybe you want to think about this too, in that way as well. And then, as I said, Ikte and I definitely checked in with each other quite a bit, though we didn't have many assignments that overlap, but when they did, definitely to make sure that we had found the same cases, or to divide the work so we weren't, sort of billing the same work essentially.
Right, that makes sense. Did either of y'all ever, during your summer associateships, find yourselves with an empty plate? And if y'all did, how did you go about finding additional assignments to work on?
I did a couple of times, but I felt kind of the partner mentor that I had mentioned was really the go-to for that. So she, sort of then reached out to people that she thought might, need additional help. But I think also, that's why it's important to kind of go to those lunches or those coffees, because then you'll learn about the different projects people are working on, and you kind of be open about, well, I can see that this project maybe is wrapping up soon. Is there, maybe a research question I could answer for you? Or, oh, we haven't worked together that much this summer. Might there be something in the future? And so, obviously don't want to be put, give me work, put pressure on anyone because they're so busy, but at least kind of just, I think, get them thinking that sometime in the next week or two, you would be open to sort of getting more work. So I try to do that informally as well as sort of formally reaching out to my mentor. And then my associate mentor was happy to sort of get me to help her, do little kind of daily tasks as well. So that's what I did.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What about you, Mackenzie?
I think it depends a little bit about how your firm handles assignments, right? Mine had kind of a centralized staffing where you could reach out and say, hey, I'm low on assignments this week. Is there anything that I can take on? But even if I didn't use that, I still would, like Hannah said, informally say during coffee chats or lunches, hey, I'm really interested in X group. Do you have anything I could work on? Or if not, could I shadow you? Could I sit in on a call? Something. Because you're there to learn as a summer, even if you don't have like a physical assignment in front of you. You should still fill your time with learning. So maybe if your firm has some kind of, video database that you can watch videos and learn more about groups or assignments, that's something to do as well. And for a transactional attorney, something I did is I would go and look at Precedent and kind of compare them, run red lines, and say, okay, why was this change made here? And then I would set up a meeting with one of the associates and kind of go over what exactly went on here, the play-by-play.
Mm-hmm. I feel like y'all both highlighted the importance of forming these relationships while you're summer associates, because that will lead to work not only as a summer, but once you start working full time. I mean, those relationships will persist, and you'll begin developing a reputation as somebody who knows what they're doing, and people will want to staff you more and more. So it becomes easier and easier. When I was a summer, I think I chiefly got more assignments through those informal relationships, through coffees, or I would go to lunch and meet a partner for the first time, and then he would put me on something. So, I mean, those are absolutely crucial when you're a summer to develop relationships like that.
Exactly. Yeah, you're laying the foundation for what you do, like you said, Harrison, when you come back.
And even if you decide that it's not that firm isn't the fit for you,
right.
I think because it is, obviously it's a very robust legal community in Houston, but as Judge Weems, who's the director of the mock trial, team sort of reminded us it's still a very small community, right?
Yes.
So you're still kind of, setting the baseline for your future wherever it is, right? That those people could give you recommendations, or when they know someone who's looking for an opening somewhere else, you can say, oh, I did good work, or that person was a curious, hard worker.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about asking partners or associates for coffee or going to lunch or dinner events or social events afterwards. And a lot of firms have a big social calendar. So did y'all ever feel like you had to sacrifice going to social events to maintain work expectations?
No. I think your job as a summer associate is technically primarily to be social. The work is a very close second. Definitely don't disregard that. But being social, getting to know everybody at the firm, helps with the reputation like Hannah and Harrison were speaking about earlier. But also it helps you, right? You get to understand who you work best with, who you kind of jive with, and that will translate into assignments. And I think even if you do feel a little pressed, hey, I have a deadline that's about the same time as this social event, all you need to do is communicate. The firm knows that you are there to get to know everybody. They're most likely, now your mileage may vary, but you're most likely going to be told, hey, that's okay, we can change this deadline, go do the social event. Get to know everybody. At least that was my experience. I don't know about you.
Well, we didn't, so again, being smaller, we didn't have as many social events sort of throughout the summer, so you really could plan around them, so you wouldn't have to forsake any of them to sort of finish your work. But I think all of the points Mackenzie made were ones I would have pointed out as well, that it's really important to form those relationships. And I was reminded also, something my co-teacher used to say is, you really want to kind of build relationships with the parents, right? Because when their kids come home, at the end of the day and they're like, oh, my teacher did this or this, they trust you more because they know you more, that maybe the story isn't exactly as their kid told you, right? That you've built that rapport. And I think it kind of goes the same in this field too. It's the mistakes maybe you made, or, the brief conversation or the email that you wrote them that they think is kind of arrogant or flippant or something, because they've known you and spent more time with you, they won't read it that certain way. So I think you're really also building the foundation for sort of the benefit of the doubt in these kind of interactions, either through email or in assignments. But when they don't really know you, then they can kind of maybe expect or think the worst of you in a way. So the social, events are really important.
And communication is just absolutely critical. And most of these firms understand that you're there to form relationships and get to know your fellow summers and the attorneys at the firm. So I'd be surprised if many firms out there just said, sorry, you can't go to this event because we need you to finish this assignment. It depends on the nature of, whether a trial is, about to happen or whether a deal is about to close. But generally firms are pretty empathetic when it comes to that kind of stuff. So given these day-to-day experiences at your firms, what are some of the things that you wish you had known beforehand that you feel would have benefited you?
I think for me, just kind of knowing what the heck precedent is. I know I keep coming back to that, but it's actually a really big part of transactional work is seeing what came before you and kind of replicating that. So you're not researching cases. You don't necessarily have to figure it all out, but you do need to understand how to locate relevant precedent. So that baseline understanding of what it is would be helpful. I think also I didn't appreciate how much understanding the business side of things in transactional work actually plays a role in the legal work you do. You need to take time to understand, okay, who is the client? What do they need? What are their financial goals? And how does that translate into a legal goal that we can act on is also pretty foundational, I think, for a lot of transactional work. Just to soothe my anxiety, I guess, just know that it'll be okay. You're not going to know much, if anything at all, and that you can learn. You are in law school. You're learning your classes. This is not that different in terms of you just have to take the time to learn.
And I had very little business experience before, starting some transactional work. So you don't have to necessarily have a background. It certainly helps, and I'm sure it's been invaluable for you because you had a little bit of that background ahead of time. But they're there to teach you, so they'll help get you to the place where you need to be. But what about you, Hannah?
I don't have nearly as a robust answer as Mackenzie does, but I think I had a pretty good idea of how the summer would go because I knew Sean O'Leary, who had been on the mock trial team and had been a summer before me. And so I think, as we've said many times about the relationships and, talking to people and building, with relations with those people who are there now, but also before, I know Sean will be there when I start, in September. And so I felt gave me a pretty good sense of what a summer would be and the personalities and what I might work on and how a day might go. And so I think I had a pretty good sense of how it would be.
That's a really good point. Yeah, now that I'm reflecting on it right here, right now, I did talk as much as I could to prior summer associates who were now associates there or studying for the bar as I am soon. And, just asking them those questions you're a little afraid to ask actual associates that you don't know or partners, hey, what time do we get there? What time? What do we wear?
Yeah.
What does the day-to-day look like? Those little things that you might think are stupid, they're important. You have the questions for a reason. So talking to people who have been in your shoes before is actually really crucial. Good point.
And if you're a 1L or a 2L and you know a 2L or 3L that has been at a firm that you're looking at or interested in potentially, just reach out to those people because they'll give you a glimpse into the firm that you won't be able to obtain otherwise. And they'll be more than happy to do so, generally speaking. So it's just emphasizing the importance of communication again.
For sure. And when I was trying to make a decision as to where to go to all year, I did do that so that I could kind of have more of a insight into what it's really like as a summer. And, maybe they'll be a little more honest, than maybe a person who obviously is trying to sell you on the firm.
Right. Yeah.
And it's working right now because I had no idea what Precedent is. So now at least my first day at Latham, I'll know what that is. So thanks, Mackenzie.
Of course, happy to help.
So do you feel like y'all had this is kind of on the similar track, but do you feel like y'all had any misconceptions about life as a summer associate before you began at your firm that you feel like now maybe has been corrected now that you've had that experience?
I think maybe I just thought for that specific firm and maybe the summer that I would go to more kind of hearings or depositions, that maybe there'd just be more kind of in the works as far as like specific trial things were going to occur. But that's more just kind of, I think, timing. Also, the summer is kind of like sometimes a little bit like Christmas, when people go on vacation, so things get moved, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But I still felt like I got a nice sort of breadth of experiences while there anyway.
Yeah, I think I underestimated the social element of being at a firm. I kind of had tunnel vision, like, okay, I'm there, I was hired to do a job, and I'm going to do that job. But it's really, like we said earlier, the social element is your primary, and the work is very close secondary. So I wish I wouldn't have underestimated that and kind of started beforehand laying the groundwork with more of those past summer associates who have been in my shoes. I also, like I said, I had kind of an anti-idea of what I would do. So I didn't know what an SEC filing was. I didn't really know what doing an IPO would entail for transactional work. But really, you're going to make checklists. You're going to review documents. It's just something you've probably done before in a new context, which is just a misconception I had. I just thought it was anti-research cases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We've talked about a little bit of this already, but what are some classes or experiences that y'all believe worked to your advantage while y'all were summer associates?
I definitely think mock trial, obviously, helped me a lot. That won't, of course, help me kind of in the research and the writing. It's more the performance, aspect of it. But just, I think, getting to know litigators, their personalities, knowing Sean, as I mentioned earlier. And I think that it's more kind of what I thought I might do 3L year was things that they do a lot of work on, like a lot of bankruptcy, and they do the patent cases. That's an idea that people could take kind of going forward. I don't know that people maybe would plan ahead to do 2L year, I see they do a lot of IP. I could take an IP class. Because obviously they're not expecting you to be an expert. They wouldn't ask you really they know you know sort of what you know. But it would be nice to have more of a groundwork. I remember a partner at the firm really sat down with me and tried to explain to me what is really involved in a patent infringement case, which obviously was not his job and was very kind and generous of him. But I think, I guess mine is kind of an anti-answer of, I think there's some things I probably could have done this year or the year before to just have a better idea of what some of the cases were about. But I don't think that's really necessary because you can also use that time during your summer associateship to kind of be in researching this, I'm going to learn the big picture too because I really have no idea what any of these sort of terms or whatever, mean. Mm-hmm. And other than that, probably our, LSS class, which I think, where we learned how to do some writing and some researching in the legal way. Helped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, being a senior articles editor on Law Review was really helpful. When you're doing it, you're like, oh my gosh, is this period italicized? This comma's not in the right spot. We need to adjust that. But you're working with deadlines. You're being super detail oriented. You're working with teams, your fellow editors, and you're also getting your work reviewed, which is something that I think a lot of law students don't experience in law school because we just take a final, we get a grade, and then we leave. But having that experience of saying, hey, here's what you missed, you're going to do that when you work as well. Someone, hopefully, is going to give you feedback, and you'll take note of it, and you'll incorporate that next time. So I think Law Review, they say it's mostly litigation focused, but I think it is pretty applicable to transactional work as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so talking about getting feedback and stuff from partners and associates, do you feel did you ever go ask for feedback or did you wait for them to give you feedback?
A lot of the time for me, they would offer it, and I didn't necessarily have to go ask for it. But there were a few times where, people are busy, right? They probably intended to give you feedback, but they have 30 million deals and you have about 3, and not really even 3 because you're still learning.
Yeah.
So I think just I keep saying coffee chat, but really that's just a good, quick way to check in with somebody and let them know. Say, hey, I wanted to, take you out on a coffee chat. Could we go over this assignment? And before that, prepare. run a red line against what you turned in to them and what they actually sent out to the client, so you can see the changes and go, hey, why did you make this change here? What's the impact of that? I think that's helpful in terms of like getting used to asking for feedback and receiving feedback.
Yeah. What about you, Hannah?
I definitely had feedback kind of at the end of the summer and in the middle of the summer, was sort of built into it of just, how you're doing so far. And my partner mentor gathered feedback from other, partners or associates I've done work on, did work for prepositions. Okay. That I done work for. But I think I did try to also kind of slip in the email, right when you're turning the assignment in. If there's any feedback you have, I'd love to hear it. And it would, maybe I'd get a little bit, mostly kind of, I think just good job, right? That kind of thing. So it is hard because you don't want to push them to give you feedback because they do have so much they're doing and don't necessarily have the time to really kind of drill down on why it wasn't exactly what they expected or not. And also with a lot of research, sometimes the feedback and that, you didn't really get any cases that helped. And they may know that they don't really think there's a case out there. They just, would like some more time devoted to it. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's a little bit of its own feedback, right, when you don't have much to present to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of like talking with partners and associates, as an incoming summer associate, I always wonder when I should go and ask a partner or associate or when I should try to problem solve it myself. So how did y'all kind of find that balance of when you should do it on your own versus when you should go ask?
I do think that's one of the hardest things to really work through, as a summer and also just as a young lawyer, because people are so busy and what's really worth their time and what's not worth their time. So I think I try to first a bit gauge sort of everyone's demeanor, and kind of how busy they seem that summer and in those moments, who might be more reticent, reluctant to help, versus maybe someone who's love to help. I have the time to help, So that was kind of, I think, part of my initial couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Then I think, not being afraid to ask other summers, for help. And then paralegals also can be a great wealth of information. I think I usually try to go maybe the associate route first of, they may have more time depending on what their caseload is sort of
mm-hmm.
versus, what would I really take to the sort of partner level. But I do think that is sort of the most difficult. But then I know, and for many things I told myself, I'm here to learn. I tried to problem solve on my own, but I have a feeling that I'm wasting a lot of time and that I just need to sort of, move on from this problem. So let me go ask. And sometimes by asking, you'll realize, oh, I did really have the tools at my disposal. I didn't really need to ask. But unless you're just kind of, I think, constantly in one person's office. And that's why I also say spread out who you ask for help, because then people don't always know that you're asking for maybe more help than you should be asking for. Mm-hmm. But I think if you're not really just bombarding someone all the time, they know you're here, you're there to learn, they want to help you learn. And so I think you'll be fine. But yeah, maybe gauge those first kind of interactions when you do ask for help from someone.
Yeah, I kind of did something similar. Maybe it's just me, but I would first start out doing everything at my disposal, what can I do without bothering other people, which is kind of what you were mentioning. And once I got to a certain point, it's I don't know what else to do here. Then I would go ask. And even before that, the main question I would ask myself is it going to be fruitful for me to continue doing this on my own, right? And then you kind of have to swallow your pride a little bit. Mm-hmm. You have to get over yourself and say, hi, I don't know what I'm doing, and go ask for help. And I think that's a little bit of my personal hesitation for asking someone else. I don't want to look dumb, but you just have to put that to the side and go learn. Because if you're just spinning your wheels and, you're just wasting time, that's not productive for anybody. So just go ask for help. And like you said, start, if you can, with summer associates. Maybe they can give you something. Then maybe the administrative staff, then associates, kind of like a hierarchy, like you were saying, Hannah. I think is the best way to approach it.
I think those are some great points. And I think to what you said earlier, I think arguably spinning your wheels makes you look worse than asking a question that might, in retrospect, be kind of dumb. Maybe you should have known the answer, but I feel like it's better just to not waste time. I feel like if you had to choose one, just ask the question. Err on the side of asking too many questions. This is kind of my personal philosophy.
Yeah, and when you ask the question, make sure you take notes on it is something I tried to do, like so you don't continue to ask the same questions. You're actually implementing the knowledge that you received from somebody.
That's a great point. I think, I didn't even think of that. Like, take notes on what they said. And I think also bring to them, like, what you already tried. So you save them time, too, in case they would have, suggested that. And also just show whomever it is that you did try to solve this on your own and couldn't. So that it's not just like you're sitting there like, well, I just don't, this is a problem. I'm going to have someone solve it for me, which I don't think many people are that way. But I think it just shows that you have tried and what has already been not worked so that they know kind of where to take it from there.
Yeah, I think it goes back to perception and your reputation, right? You want to come across as a hard worker because you are. And so showing them all the steps you took and you still weren't able to figure it out just shows that you did try. You're not just waddling up there asking for someone to do it for you.
Well, both of y'all have given so much wonderful advice that will benefit soon-to-be summer associates. Is there anything else off the top of y'all's heads that you can think of that you'd like to share with these soon-to-be summer associates?
I think that, yes, a couple of things. Proofread your work. I mean, I did proofread, but I remember a specific assignment that I spent a lot of time on, and I think I just didn't give myself enough of a break between kind of when I finished it and when I turned it in to like take a step back and then print it out and kind of read it line by line. Because I looked at it later after I turned it in to kind of proofread it one more time before turning it into the hiring partner, and I realized, I'd made a few careless mistakes that I just shouldn't have, and I think it's just because I looked at it so many times. And so any tricks that you kind of learned in law school or from other jobs or whatever of how to proofread your work the best, for sure implement that sort of all, the whole time. Because even little, emails that you think are just kind of like, oh, here's my answer, should still think about who's going to get this email, right? Is it going to be the partner, that's on the case, is somehow, down the line, a client, whatever, right? So proofreading and sort of taking your time in that way. I think be curious, which I feel like we've kind of said in many different ways, about whom you're working with, about what they're doing. And I think, being kind and being collaborative is really important. I think people can kind of get very competitive and, and want to look like the best summer associate, or the best lawyer or whatever. But, in the end, it's kind of like, how well did you work with other people and what did you learn from them, and be willing to sort of to help other people out, because they'll hopefully return the favor in the future, knowing that you're someone who's willing to spend those few minutes, discussing a problem or working something out with them.
Yeah, I had similar notes, and kind of going back to the be kind thing. I think that's really important. Also, the kindness doesn't stop with the attorneys at the firm. You should be kind to everyone you come across. The cleaning staff, hospitality, the administrative staff, anybody you talk to, they are humans just like you. No one is below you. Treat them as equals. Treat them with kindness and respect, because, everyone's human. And then I think going back from just being kind to everybody, which you should do, whether or not you're working in a law firm, but that's just my take on life. I think you should also be authentic to who you are. Don't get caught up in, oh, I'm this prim and proper lawyer. You're going to come across as fake. And also, that's mental energy you're spending on something that doesn't really matter. Be professional, that's for sure, but be authentic to who you are. And in that, you'll, I think, have a better opportunity to figure out, okay, what practice groups do I like? Who do I work with the best? And kind of all the stuff that Hannah said. She gives great advice, by the way.
Well, as usual, Hannah and Mackenzie, it is a pleasure speaking with you both, and we both really appreciate y'all being here with us today.
Yes, the tips are so helpful, and I'm sure they'll help a lot of summer associates.
Well, thank you so much for having us on.
Yes, thank you so much.
And I'm very thrilled to leave the podcast in the capable hands of Graysen and her co-host Jeffrey. I'm super excited to see the direction they take things. And it's been an honor and a privilege co-hosting Emphasis Added alongside Jake Garino. We've had an absolute blast. And like I said, we're just excited to see where it goes from here. So this is Harrison Little signing off.
Thanks for listening. Emphasis Added is a podcast brought to you by the Houston Law Review. If you like what you see, check us out on Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast streaming app for new content when it drops.
Follow us on Instagram at EmphasisAddedPod or check out the Law Review at HoustonLawReview.org.